My father was the first person to love me, then leave me. Today's episode of the Power Portal, we're talking about healing from an absent father. It's giving daddy issues, it's giving father wound, all of that. And as I was preparing to, just mentally preparing to have this conversation, I got so emotional, which is interesting because I'm accustomed to just like unpacking the relationship that I would have wanted with my mom and kind of grieving what that relationship could have been, right? What it had the potential to be, but just due to just circumstances, they're just not, right? Like I have this boundary. I'm just like, I've learned specifically coming out of abusive relationships that I am no longer allowing for people to give me half-ass kind of love and just be in my life. I'm no longer allowing people to say that they love me, but they do not use it as a verb. There's no action behind it. There is an accountability behind it. Um, and it's just not something that I'm subscribing to anymore. It's giving cancel subscription. And so I feel like I've been doing that healing work for a while, but y'all, my true healing from grieving the relationship that I would have wanted with my dad really just came about a couple months ago. So I'll get into what that moment was like, but these conversations are really important because people with unresolved daddy issues struggle with a few things that impact us in our adult life, right? It isn't just being a little child and having these issues. This isn't something that only happens to daughters, right? You can be of any gender and experience these unresolved daddy issues. But when they go unresolved, when they are unhealed, people struggle with trusting people. They fear abandonment. They tend to be jealous and possessive in their romantic relationships. And this is just psychological research on this. And so it's important to heal from these things because you don't want to be a distrustful, fearful, jealous, possessive person, right? You want to make space for a love where people can see you and there's mutual love and respect. And I thought for a minute, I was like, well, I should get my cries out and then record. But even as I'm recording, I'm getting emotional because my mom was always there, right? And so my mom just it's different. And I keep thinking about my mom because I would hear her say like, you have a certain level of grace for your dad, but yet he was absent. And that's very valid. I think it's very important to think about, if you have a single parent, like who was the parent who was there doing the raising, right? And I will never take that from my mom. However, my dad represents Mm. he represents a love that I never feel like I had. I felt like I had, and a love that I was always working towards. And that is really sad because I always wanted this relationship with my father. I used to go to church on Sundays and I would wish for my father to come back into my life. So let me bring it on back historically because this episode is about healing and healing is continuous and healing has its up and down moments and healing has moments where you'll be okay and you can talk about it without crying and then other times you talk about it and all you can do is cry and that's okay too. So I was born in 1987. My brother was born in 1990. And why that's important around his birth was that when I was born, my mom and my dad, they both wanted me. They planned it. They were like, we want a daughter, we want a child, we're ready, we want this. And so I came and everybody was great and everybody was happy and whatever, right? Like love was in the air. And then when my mom became pregnant with my brother, um, it became very clear that my father did not want another child. And he told my mother, well, you have a decision. I either stay with you and Jewel, and we have our family of three, or you get an abortion. Or well, you stay. Well, option one involved an abortion. Or you have the baby and I leave. And my mom really debated this, right? She's in her early 20s. She's relatively like in the first 5 years of marriage, you're newly married. So she's newly married. This is her first time living outside of the house. Like there was this piece of, well, I don't want to be a single mom, of two. Like I'd rather just have this family with this one child. But my mom knew she really wanted two kids. Um, she's one of six, so she just strongly believes that like a child should have another companion, right? And not too far after, because my mom's siblings are relatively close in age, like literally like a year or two apart, each of them. And so it's really interesting when I think about this ultimatum he gave her. And I feel sad for my mom thinking about what that ultimatum could have done to her emotionally. And so she went to her mother, my grandmother, and she went to her father, my grandfather, and told them. And they were very much like, oh no, we don't want you to be a single parent, right? And so not they, well, my grandmother was like, we don't want you to be a single parent. You need to just take the option of him staying. My grandfather was like, nah, let him leave. You have family. And so my mom listened to her dad. And I'm very glad that he did, because my brother is very special to me. And my mom made the decision to have my brother and thus be a single mom of two. That is a cruel man to even like just starting there. That is cruel to put that ultimatum on someone. It's cruel to my brother that he has to live with this burden, knowing that if he wasn't born, things could have been different for me as his sister. Things could have been different for his mom. Just things could have been different, and feeling that burden. And because I'm the host of this power portal, I'm going to bring it to myself as well. How unfair it was to me. Because from 1987 to like late 1989, you wanted me. You wanted to be around and you wanted to be a dad to me. But it switched and you just didn't want that anymore. And so that's really sad. And that's kind of the root, and that's kind of how it starts. And when I think about religion, that's the number one thing that I prayed for, was for him to come back, for him to realize that he made a mistake, that it isn't okay to have a single Black mother in this world raise two kids. And so I want to bring you to three childhood memories that really stick out for me. First is the Super Nintendo. So when I graduated kindergarten, my father bought me a Super Nintendo. And I remember the kids being like, "Oh my gosh, it had just came out." Like it was like, "What? This is such a big deal." I was not the kid who appreciated any type of gaming system. I'm like, "Give me a tea set, give me a doll, give me nail polish." Like I was that kind of girl. Very, very feminine. And so I was like, "What is this video game?" Right? Like I wasn't thinking in that way of gaming. I just wasn't. I was like, "This isn't it for me." So but it was something that was really expensive. It was something that the kids in the neighborhood thought was so cool. So I kept it. And fun fact, y'all, I kept it up until last year. So every place that I moved, I think about going away to college for 4 years. I think about all of that. And I always made sure that I had my Super Nintendo with me, unopened, unplayed, unused. And that was solely because I had this sense of, well, he thought about me, and even though it wasn't something that I would have wanted to use, I'm like, he thought about me. He loved me. He cared for me. And let's bring it back to graduation. My father would attend all of my graduations. Like, hey, he went to my kindergarten graduation, my elementary graduation, my middle school graduation, my high school graduation, my college graduation. He went to religious ceremonies like my communion and my confirmation. I'm Catholic. If you know the vibes, you know the vibes. So, or I was Catholic. I am not Catholic anymore. But it was this piece of like he would come around for accolades. And I think that while I am smart, I know that a huge part of me excelling in school was so that on graduation, I would get these awards. I would be, I would make speeches at graduation and I would, just get awards in all different categories. I mean, in fifth grade, I had the library award. Okay. Like, the librarian award, one of those, because I was a book reader. I was always, I won the Golden Record of Achievement award twice, which they only give to one student in each Brooklyn school. So I won it in elementary school and I won it in middle school. And I would really try to make him proud. And I thought maybe that once he got that graduation ticket and he saw me get all these awards and he would see how the teachers would talk about me and he would just see how smart I was, that he would find me worthy to be in my life. And so I excelled to like try to get him to see me, get him to connect with me. I am balling, y'all. And so that's a memory that I hold really close to me because I know that was something that I was trying to get him to really feel proud of me for. And he would always come with his suit. He's sharp and he would, get the accolades. It's like, oh, he's a cadet. I'm a cadet and making him proud. And it still wasn't enough. And I really wanted it to be enough. Another memory is that my father would say he was coming to pick me up, me and my brother, and he wouldn't come most of the times. And so I would stay outside on the porch until it was dark. And I would look at every car who drove down my one-way street. And I remember in particular, he had different cars throughout, my childhood, but I remember this one particular time he had this red car. And so a red car pretty much stands out, right? And so I would just literally just look at every car, just hoping it would be red. And if it was red, I'm like looking through to see if it would slow down. And I have so many memories of him not coming and he wouldn't call. And my mom would be like, Jewel, come inside. He's not coming. And I just never understood why he didn't come. I just didn't. I was like, I don't understand how you can, get me and my brother excited and then you just wouldn't come. And after a while, in the beginning, my brother would be with me, sitting with me on the porch. And then after a while, it would just be me because he knew that my father wasn't coming. He got it. But I still had this hope that he would come around and that, yeah, the last 10 times he didn't come, but maybe this 11th time he would. And then another memory, because this is the last one that I'll share, is that the few times that he would pick us up, he would have a girlfriend in the car or somebody he was dating or talking to, and he would pick us up. Or maybe he wouldn't have her, but sometimes there would be some sort of woman in the car. And he would take us to family member houses. And he never took us to his home as a child, just other people's houses. And that was really hard for me because here I am waiting, right? Imagine if you are not coming around and then you finally come around and then we talk a little bit in the car, really surface things, and then you drop me off. And then I stay there. And then on Sunday, you pick me back up from that family member's house. And then you bring me back to my mom's house. And my mom asks, well, how was the weekend with your father? And I can't tell her because I don't know what it's like to actually spend a weekend with my father. I don't know what that's like. He was the fucking Uber that basically picked me up and dropped me off. That's what he did. And so, y'all, this is childhood, but then it grows and it gets deeper. It gets deeper. And I think that there was this hurdle that I had to overcome when my mom outed me to my dad and told him that I was queer, that I was a lesbian at the time. And my father at the time, he believes in like, all right, I don't have to like, emotionally be there for you, extremely epitome of emotional unavailability. So he's like, I don't have to be there for you emotionally. You have your mom for that, but I can provide in these small ways financially. So he paid my phone bill at the time, paid it all through college. And he told me he was going to pay it up until I got married. He was like, look, I got you. And the day that my mom told him that much, we're fast forwarding now, right? I'm like 22. And the day she outed me to him. He cut off my phone and I had no idea. So I'm just in Brooklyn, on my way home from work and I had no idea that my phone was cut off. So that starts the day that I got my own phone line. Shout out to Metro PCS, which then I eventually got Sprint after that. But I had Metro PCS at the moment, around 22. And I was really just like, how could you just leave me stranded like that? You didn't even give me like, hey, I'm about to cut off your phone bill in like a month. Like it was immediate. And that really hurt me again. And I remember something that he said to me. He's like, well, I didn't raise you to be this way. And I was like, well, you didn't raise me. And this starts this hurdle of really navigating sexuality within my family and acceptance within my family really became this piece of like, not this man who was not around my entire childhood consistently, not this man who literally had my mom raise me, not this man who did not come around emotionally, not this man who I have his last name, not him telling me he didn't raise me to be gay, not him saying that. So then now I have this anger, right? Like it's like the audacity of you. And so that's something that is this hurdle, right? Because when I was quote unquote doing the right thing, right, before he knew that I was gay, so quote unquote to him doing the right thing, going to school, doing all the stuff, he still didn't love me in the ways that I needed. He still didn't love me in the ways that I needed. So then you add queerness. So now he really doesn't love me in the way that I need. And so I've spent multiple throughout my adult life. I've been in and out of relationship with my dad, and I really use relationship. I really shouldn't even use it. Let me pause. Let me edit myself. I've been in and out of having being on speaking terms with my dad. I've actually never had a relationship with my father. That's the reality. In and out of speaking terms. I mean, I wouldn't speak to him for 3 years, and then I wouldn't speak to him for 1 year. And this past November, on November 11th, the day of my wedding ceremony, I sent him a text and I finally released him. And I want to read this text to you. So this is the morning of my wedding, and I sent this at 6:21 a.m. And I said, "Good morning, Dad. My wedding is today. Usually on days like today, a daughter would have had the support of her father. However, you made the choice to not accept me as I am, a beautiful, strong, and smart queer woman. So on this day, I choose to forgive you for never being there for me when I needed you the most. On this day, I release myself from your expectations and become my own woman, a wife. I hope that one day you come around for yourself. I hope that before you take your last breath, you recognize the harm you've caused me my whole life. However, I'm no longer waiting on you to love me unconditionally. You are forgiven and you are released. I love you so much and always will. Take care of yourself. I will not be contacting you any further." Now, my father did respond to that. He says, "Good morning. I wish you all the best." But I never got "I'm so sorry for not being there for you your entire life." I never got "Is it too late? Can I fix it? Can we have a relationship now?" And so what this has taught me, with him being the first person who ever broke my heart, is that there will be people who won't take accountability. There will be people who won't have the energy or capacity to repair. And there will be people who are supposed to love you unconditionally and they just won't. They just can't. And When I think about that letter and I think about everything that was coming up for me as I wrote that letter, and even reading that letter back, my inner child is proud of me, but also sad, but proud. Proud that I spoke up, proud that I released him, proud that I got myself off of this roller coaster of emotion, of feeling mad and feeling sad. And what you're hearing right now is because it's fresh, is because there was something about me. He knew that I was getting married, and there was a part of me that just kind of hoped in his, 60 plus, area of his life now that he would come around and he would get it, especially with him losing his mom a few years ago, and especially with him looking around and seeing his nieces get married and his nephews get married, and just for him to say, I want to be there for you at this point in your life. And I just kind of, the inner child and the, in me that still, that prayed in the Catholic Church, still kind of had this little bit of hope. It was like super minuscule. It was like less than 10%, but it was still there because he never really got a chance to know me. He never did. And what that has taught me is a few things. And I want to share that with you all because, once again, this is all about healing from an absent father. And a lot of the times we can end up internalizing feeling unworthy, feeling like unconditional love isn't something that we deserve, and we do. And so part of my healing is nurturing my inner child and asking what she needs and honoring those needs now, reparenting her. I'm like, you don't have to wait for anybody to come, and, you don't have to wait for someone to let you down because you don't keep people around who let you down. Like, it's just this piece of I'm in control now as an adult, right? I have the power to direct the course of my life. And I didn't have that power as a little girl, right? Like, I didn't have that power, and I shouldn't have had that power because I was a child, right? That's a lot of labor to hold for a child. So I wasn't supposed to have that, like, I'm in charge of my life. No, I was a child. Other people were in charge of my life. But I'm an adult now, and I get to reclaim my power. I get to give myself the things that I need. Another part of my healing is that the things that I was looking for in him, the validation, the support, the emotional intelligence to be able to connect with me, the protection, I can give those things to myself. Those things that I was looking for in him, they exist within me. I get to give that to me. That's really hard because oftentimes those things that we're missing in our parent will look for in a partner. But even that, partners are human too. They have their trauma too. So, what does it mean to take those things that you look for in a partner as a result of not having a parent, a present parent? Like protection, like strength, like attention, like fulfillment, all of those things, and giving it to you. So that has been the work that I've been on. Really being intentional about practicing radical self care. And I will be having a whole episode about radical self care because it's more than just taking care of ourselves. We have to do it in a radical way, in an unapologetic way. And so that really helps. So when I think about being worthy, that self-care piece is journaling and writing affirmations and reminding myself that the ways that my father didn't show up for me as a child and even till now isn't because I'm unworthy, isn't because I'm unloving, isn't because I'm a person that's undeserving. It's because of his own stuff, nothing to do with me, and not internalizing that. And lastly, practicing healthy boundaries. So my father Since that message, and you saw I ended it with, I will not be contacting you any further. Big, big, big energy of where I'm at in my life. I was like, I will not, the communication will cease to exist. Okay. It's giving block party. It's very much where I'm at in my life. But since then, I was clear about I will not be contacting him. I didn't know that he would contact me. So I've noticed my phone's stay on do not disturb. But I've noticed that I've seen few missed calls from him. And where I'm at with practicing healthy boundaries is I don't want to have these surface relationships. I don't want to hop on the call with him and talk for 2 minutes and then he just doesn't talk about my marriage. He doesn't ask me how my wife is doing. He doesn't ask me about my life. It's super general. So let's fast forward. That was November, right? Let me look at my text. So I had major surgery. I opened up the Power Portal podcast talking about the surgery that I had. I had hysterectomy in January. And he reaches out to me in February and he says, "Good afternoon, big girl. How are you doing? How's everything going?" And I tell him that I'm fully recovered from major surgery that I had last month and I'm feeling better. And he goes, "I'm glad you're doing fine." And this is the part that I'm saying, y'all. I just shared that I had major surgery. He didn't say what was the surgery. He didn't say, "Oh my goodness, I wish I would have known. Do you need any support? I know that you said that you're recovered." Or maybe call me right then, right? Instead, it's this surface, "Glad it went well. I'm your daughter." Like, I'm not a random person. You would probably ask a more deep question to a coworker. You would probably ask a more deep question to a neighbor. I am your child. And that made me so sad. And so my boundary is not getting back into that cycle. As I was setting a boundary with myself, having realistic expectations, not getting back into the cycle of like, well, maybe you'll come around. No, you're not doing enough for me. So I'm not going to call you back and have this 2 minute, 3 minute tops conversation. I have not had a conversation for over 10 minutes with my father. I'm not doing that with you. And so that boundary that I have with me to set healthy expectations for myself, right? To not let that inner child take me off course from my healing, but also with my father. Like, you don't get to just call and have these surface ass conversations and not acknowledge my whole entire life. You know, you're just not going to do that. And so I'm in this place right now. And that's why I think this episode is probably one of the hardest for me to record, is because it's really sad when you think about my mom and my dad both being people I don't have a relationship with, but I don't know my dad much and he doesn't know me. And so when I think about family ties, which I shared when I talked about my mom around the Mother's Day episode, I want to end this episode with the clip that talks about my dad, because I talk about my mom in the beginning and I talk about my dad and I start with, "Dear Dad, blood on your hands too. Leaving me and Jay in 1990, got some splaining to do." And I go on and I'll let you listen to that. But I want to start there because I want to be very clear with myself, with my inner child, with my ancestors, and anyone listening, that accountability and healing is necessary. And the words that I wrote talking about my dad and saying, like, I know you didn't have your dad around. I get that that hurt you, right? You got that generational trauma too. However, you also have failed me. And I know I'm worthy of having a good dad. When I think about those Instagram reels that show up on my timeline, when I think about, Father's Day coming up this weekend and people talk about the relationships with their dads, I don't believe that every Black father is an absent father. I don't believe that every Black dad is a deadbeat dad. I don't. But if you're listening to this and you have had a father who was absent in your life, whether physically, like mine was, and emotionally, like mine was, or maybe you had a dad around, but they weren't there emotionally, or Maybe your dad was around as a child and they've abandoned you as you're an adult. Or maybe your dad just never was around. You don't even know who your dad is. Like, I hope and send vibes that you heal, that you step into the place of taking your life back and taking your power back and reclaiming your power and reparenting yourself and healing your inner child and knowing that you're worthy. And even though you didn't have the father that you deserved, it still doesn't mean that you weren't worthy of it. And it still doesn't mean that it's too late for you to not get all the things that you deserve. For me, it's protection. For me, it's strength, right? Those are those pieces. For me, it's that level of support. What does that mean to give that to yourself? What does that mean to take that into your own hands and truly be the driver in your own life? And so, thank you for listening to the Power Portal today. Thank you for holding me as I shared space with you today. Thank you, as always, for listening and tapping into the Power Portal.
Dear Dad, blood on your hands too. Leaving me and Jay in 1990, got some explaining to do. I know your dad wasn't here and that hurts you. You got this generational trauma too. You're just like them, ended up carrying it long math, a deadbeat path. You had our lives to make it up to us, you falling short. Your time is running out, don't turn this off. Not gonna yell and curse you out again. This time I'm out here music blasting, now I push the pen. Spend my life trying to make you proud. It didn't work, but this will, cause there's truth ringing loud. Tears ran out a long time ago, took a while to get here. Slow-mo, hard to miss what I never had. I know I'm worthy, all I wanted was a good dad. My first heartbreak was you, still healing, trying to make it through. I'm living testimony, living proof. Generational trauma ends with you. Healing family ties, this song looks you right in the eye. Curse breaking, not easy, Dad, I need you to try. I need you to try.